Belarus has played a complex and multi-layered role in the context of the war in Ukraine, which began in 2022. As a close ally of Russia, both politically and militarily, Belarus has taken a controversial position. Here are some aspects of how Belarus is dealing with the war in Europe. Military support for Russia. Belarus has made its infrastructure and territory available for Russian military operations. Russian troops and equipment have been stationed on Belarusian territory, including the use of Belarusian military bases and airspace as a base for operations in Ukraine. This has provoked international criticism and increased the isolation of Belarus on the international stage. Diplomatic stance. Officially, President Alexander Lukashenko has repeatedly emphasized that Belarus will not take a direct part in the fighting, even if he supports Russia's actions. Lukashenko has also suggested that Minsk could serve as a venue for peace talks, similar to the Minsk agreements negotiated in 2014 and 2015. Domestic political impact. Involvement in supporting Russia also has domestic political consequences for Belarus. The government is under pressure as part of the population, and opposition groups reject involvement in the conflict. Economic impact. The economic impact is also significant. Western sanctions against Russia have an indirect impact on Belarus, as the country is heavily dependent on Russia economically. The sanctions against Russian banks, companies, and the energy sector also affect the Belarusian economy. Refugee issues. Belarus also has to deal with issues of refugee flows. While the country itself is not considered the main destination for Ukrainian refugees, the geographical proximity and political situation has meant that Belarus is indirectly affected. The government has tried to maintain a neutral position with regard to the reception of refugees. Overall, it is clear that Belarus plays a key role in the geopolitical events of Eastern Europe, which are strongly characterized by the alliance with Russia. This has a profound impact on its international standing, the domestic political situation, and the country's economic stability. Belarus, officially known as the Republic of Belarus, has lived through a turbulent period in the 21st century, characterized by political stagnation and international isolation. The country has been ruled since 1999 by President Alexander Lukashenko, whose authoritarian leadership is often criticized. Lukashenko's government has been accused of restricting media freedom, suppressing the opposition, and manipulating elections, leading to considerable political and social tension in the country. The economy of Belarus remains heavily dependent on state-owned enterprises and Russian support. Despite some attempts to modernize the economy and attract foreign investment, the country remains largely dominated by traditional industries such as engineering and agriculture. The economic situation is often influenced by political decisions that discourage investment and innovation. In the year 2020, presidential elections were held, which were accompanied by massive protests and international criticism. The election, in which Lukashenko was again declared the winner, was considered unfair and non-transparent by many countries and international observers. The protests that followed were violently suppressed by the authorities, leading to even greater isolation for Belarus. In terms of foreign policy, Belarus remains closely linked to Russia, partly through its membership of the Eurasian Economic Union and the Collective Security Treaty. While these alliances strengthen the country's economic and military security, they also limit its political independence. Culturally, Belarus is a country proud of its traditions and linguistic diversity, with Belarusian and Russian as official languages. The country has a rich history and culture, which is expressed in its music, literature, and folk art. Despite political repression, there is a vibrant community of artists and intellectuals trying to express their creative vision under difficult conditions. Overall, Belarus faces many challenges in the 21st century, including the need for political reform, improving the human rights situation, and modernizing its economy to be more competitive in the global market. Minsk, the capital and largest city of Belarus, plays a central role in the country's political, economic, and cultural landscape. The city has a rich history and has undergone a variety of upheavals and reconstructions over the centuries. Here are some key aspects of Minsk in the 21st century. Geography and population. Minsk is centrally located in Belarus and has about 2 million inhabitants. The city is an important transport center connecting Eastern and Western Europe. History and development. After severe destruction during the Second World War, Minsk was largely rebuilt, with the Soviet influence strongly recognizable in the architecture. Wide boulevards and monumental public buildings characterize the cityscape. Economy. As the economic center of Belarus, Minsk is home to many large industrial companies, particularly in the automotive, mechanical engineering and electronics sectors. The city has also developed as a hub for information technology, with a growing sector that is often referred to as the Silicon Valley of Eastern Europe. Culture and education. Minsk is the cultural heart of Belarus and has numerous theatres, museums and libraries. The city is also an educational centre with several large universities and scientific institutes. Politics and society. As the political centre of Belarus, Minsk is the seat of the national government and numerous international organisations. The city has also been a focal point of political activity and demonstrations, especially after the controversial presidential elections in 2020. Tourism. Despite political and economic challenges, Minsk attracts tourists with its interesting mix of Soviet and modern architecture, historical sites and lively cultural events. Popular attractions include Independence Square, the Island of Tears and the Holy Spirit Cathedral. Overall, Minsk is a city that balances between its Soviet past and its evolving modern identity, and it remains a central player in the social, cultural and political discourses of Belarus.